Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today I'm going to show you how to use resist masking on a large area. So first I'm going to heat emboss with some black embossing powder, this stamp by Claire Lloyd, Paper Artsy. I'm inking it up with some Versamark ink onto 110 pound Strathmore watercolor paper. So it's the thicker version that I don't normally use, but because I'm going to be applying a lot of water to it, I decided to go ahead and use the 110 pound. So I'm going to apply my superfine Ranger black embossing powder, and I'll heat it to set it. Now the reason why I'm heat embossing this is because I also want the outline to be resisted. Now I'm going to color this girl with some Inktense pencils, and I'm using 3 different colors for her hair. I'm using dark chocolate, sepia, ink, and oak. So as you can see, I'm drawing along the lines of her hair that are already there. So this is the first color, and I'm just randomly doing it in different spots on her head. And I'm going to continue that with my second color here, and then whatever's left, I'm going to use my third color. And this is going to make her hair more realistic looking because it'll have multiple colors in it. Now, once I'm done with all my pencils, I'm going to take my aqua painter, and it's important to draw right along the lines of the hair, just like I colored with the pencil. And that way it preserves the individual colors and it doesn't mix them all together. So I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to go along the same lines as her hair. And you can see that you can still see all the colors that I put in there. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to speed this up a little bit so you can see how this finishes up. It's really kind of magical how the colors just come alive when you put water on them. Now, if you read the post associated with this video, you know that this is the 3rd time I'm coloring this girl, so I should be a professional at it. The first 2 times I created this card, I used rubber cement and also some masking fluid that ended up fading the color, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm using colored pencils here, and it was pulling up some of the color and in some cases some of the paper, so it was ruining my card. Anyway, so now I'm done with the hair here. I'm going to work on her skin, and I'm using 2 different colors, and I found that this is the best way to get a good skin tone with the Inktense pencils. I'm using Willow and Mid Vermilion, I think is how you pronounce that. And what I do is I wet the area first, and then I'll pick up both colors with my aqua painter at the same time before I place it onto the paper. And it's important to get that water down first because you don't want any lines here. You want it to really easily blend. And then if I put too much color, which you'll see me do in a minute, you can always take it out because there's so much water on your cardstock. Now you can kind of adjust it, you know, add more of the brownish color, add more of the orange color depending on who the person is that you're coloring. But you can see I added too much color, so I just took a tissue and I dabbed it and it pulled right up, and then I can go back in and start blending some more because there's still water there. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up and finish up her skin. Okay, moving on with her lips, I'm just using chili red, and then I also use that same red on different parts of her dress. And you'll notice that I'm doing the same thing I did with her skin, which is I'm pulling the color directly from the pencil. Now her eyes are green. I used, I can't remember the name of the green, but I'll put it in my post. And it's pretty bright, but I didn't want it to be so bright. So the great thing about these pencils is that you can mix colors. So I added some sepia, which is kind of a brownish. And when I dropped that in, it made her eyes more of a hazel color. So it was just perfect. And then finally, I'm going to grab some violet, deep violet, and I'm going to color the rest of her dress. I find that for the smaller areas, it's easiest to just pull some color out of the pencil directly with your brush. And then her hair thing is also chili red. All right, now here is the fun part. This is Irresistible Pico Embellisher in Shimmer. Now mine is not very shimmery because I think it's settled to the bottom of the bottle, so mine is clear. You'll see that there's a needle tip here, and you pull it out so it does not clog the tip. I really like this embellisher a lot. I thought about using glossy accents, but it's very thick, and I was afraid that it would leave too much of a glossy finish on this girl. I really didn't want her to be super glossy, and this embellisher goes on pretty thin, and I brushed it almost all the way to the thinnest level, and it still resisted and looked gorgeous. So I actually had to try a bunch of different things to even think about using this, so I'm so glad that a lot of these other techniques failed so that I can find this solution, because I highly recommend it. So when it's done, it's not totally matte, but it's definitely matter and thinner than you would get from clear embossing or from the glossy accents or crystal effects or anything like that. So I ended up just coloring her hair first because I was fearful that the colored pencil would get on the brush mixed in with the embellisher and then bleed onto the other areas. But I discovered when I was doing her face that that's not the case. It does not pull the colored pencil out onto the brush. When I was using my Versa marker, it was doing that. So this actually works perfectly. And with the little lines of her hair, her stray hairs, I just went ahead and I didn't use the brush. I just used this very, very fine tip applicator, and it worked great. Alright, now that that's finished, I'm going to put this back into the bottle, which you may need glasses for because it is very, very tiny. But it does go on there, and it twists on and it preserves just fine. Alright, now for the background, I decided to use some distress paint and also some distress ink. So this is Chipped Sapphire. It's my favorite dark blue, and I'm just going to put some onto my Ranger craft mat. And then I'm going to take my distress paint, and the reason why I'm using paint is because I wanted something thicker. And I don't have chipped sapphire in a paint, so that's why I'm using the ink there, but I wanted something thick for my background. And so it's a dabber, and you just squeeze it. You can see I'm squeezing it here, and I'm just dabbing it onto my craft mat, and it just comes out at the top. Now once I get that all down, I'm going to take my water, and I'm just going to spritz it. Not too much water, you don't want it to be completely soaking wet, but I do want the colors to blend together, and I want it to cover my cardstock. So I'm going to figure out where she needs to be so that I can get some dark blue at the top, and I'm going to place it carefully on top, and then I'm going to make little circles, and that's just to blend it together, but I don't want to move it too much because then the colors will blend too much. So now I'm going to pick it up here and see what I have, and it's different every single time, and I thought it came out pretty good. And I'm just going to show you, I usually don't like to leave things alone, so I'll just keep putting it in there, and I thought maybe a little bit of dark blue in the lower left-hand corner, and so I dipped it over there, and I didn't get it, so I'm going to try it one more time here, and I've got some dark blue in the corner, which I really liked. I love doing this technique because it's so fun to get something different every time. So I put it back in there to get a little bit more dark color, and you can see you've got kind of really dark spots there. And that happens sometimes, but to get rid of that, all you have to do is spritz it with a little bit of water, and it'll really blend it out a little. And then I like to cover some of the areas I may have missed with a brush, kind of just dabbing it, but not too much. Now I was very afraid that this paint would dry on the girl with all my bad experiences, and that it would stick to the embellisher. And so I'm wiping off a little bit just to make sure. And I did wipe off a little bit more here, and I'm just speeding it up. I didn't want to take any of the background off, so I was just going to do just enough to kind of get the main light areas. And I noticed that I had some paint pooling, and I didn't want it to affect my embellisher either. So I went ahead and spread it out a little bit with a brush, but you have to be really careful not to remove too much. And then I also like to take either a baby wipe or a tissue and just touch the edges where it's starting to pull up, because I find that it starts to, as it dries, it starts to creep back in toward the image. And I didn't want that. So this is where I decided to just let it lie and then let it dry. So here it is all dry, and I cleaned off the girl, and it just looks so great. I'm really, really happy with the way this turned out. Now I'm going to trim it on the left and on the top so that I can mat it on my card base, which is going to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. My sentiment is from this 8-ball set by Avery L. Could I Love You Anymore? And I'm going to stamp it with some VersaFine Black Onyx ink. twice on a piece of Nina cardstock, just a scratch paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it right up against the A so to get as much room as I can after the U, and then right up against the U so that I can get space before the A. And that way I can break up my sentiment and put it on the front. I'm just going to use some two-way glue pen to put the different pieces on there. And then once I get that secured in place, I'm going to use my ATG to adhere this to my card base. Now I felt like the card needed just a little something extra, and my camera was off when I did this, unfortunately, but paint splatters are a great way to add a little bit of interest. And so I took my Dilutions spray, which is white, and I realized that the spray gets a lot of gunk stuck at the bottom of the bottle. So if you take your brush and you really stir it from the bottom, you'll get more of a thicker liquid. And so I just tapped my brush at the top, and if you just want little dots, then use just a little bit of spray. If you want bigger dots, then use a thicker amount on your brush. And then I just wiped away the excess dots on front of her face and took off my little post-it masking that I covered the sentiment up with, and that is the card for today. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.